In the beginning, we see a lady who is making a small robot. After it is made, the robot says, "Hello, Mom. My name is Nam Shin." Seeing him, the lady starts crying. She says, "I missed you a lot." After which he hugs her. Then we are shown a scene from 1 year ago where she is giving a speech about made-in robots. And she is a very famous robot scientist of Korea. The lady says, "In the future, such robots are going to come very soon." Seeing this, you will also be forced to think whether it is a human or a robot. Then the child stands up and says, "It is not like that at all. I am not a robot, but I am also a human being." After which the lady introduces everyone to that small child and says, "This is my son, who is just 10 years old." Then we see them both talking together, and then the phone of Nam Shin's father rings nearby, and he becomes very happy on hearing it. We also see a person in front who has the phone of Nam Shin's father. And this is our villain Jong-gil, after which a lot of people are there. Jong-gil takes Nam Shin with him. So, while saying sorry to Nam Shin's mom, he says, Nam Shin has been called by Nam Shin's grandfather. Hearing this, Nam Shin's mom says, "Earlier, the grandfather refused to accept me as his daughter-in-law and my son as his grandson. So, why has he called Nam Shin to him now?" So you will go and he tells Nam Shin's mom, "Your husband has committed suicide last night." And he gives her the death certificate and leaves from there. Then we see Nam Shin's mom at her husband's memorial side, where she is very settled. Next morning, Nam Shin's mom goes to Nam Shin's grandfather's house and throws the bag full of money in front of Jong-gil and starts searching for her son everywhere. Then Nam Shin comes to her. She is very happy to see him and asks him to come with her. But Nam Shin refuses to go with her. He says, "From now on, I will stay with my grandfather because my dad died only because of you, and I also don't want to die like him." Nam Shin tells his mom, "I will never go back with you. Please stop coming here, and if you don't do this, then I will also die." After which Nam Shin goes to his grandfather and tells him, "I have done you. If you fulfilled your promise, now you will not harm my mom, right?" Hearing this, his grandfather says yes. Jong-gil tells Nam Shin's mom, "Your husband died because he did not listen to his dad, so if you want your son to stay alive, then you should stop doing all this." Hearing this, she gets very upset and leaves this place for her son and goes away from here. She misses her son a lot. On the other hand, Nam Shin is also missing his mom a lot. After which we are shown a scene of Czech Republic 1998, where Nam Shin's mom is making a robot that looks exactly like Nam Shin. And as soon as this robot is made, she gets very upset after seeing her son after such a long time. He calls Nam Shin's mom Mom. Hearing this, she says to the robot, "Can you call me Mom once again?" Then the robot, Nam Shin, looks at her and says, "My role number 1 is to hug someone when they cry." After which he goes and hugs his mother. After that, we see the same robot trying to climb the stairs, but he is unable to do so and falls down. After which his mother helps him again. Then we are shown a scene from 2004, Seal, where we see the real Nam Shin, who has grown up. On the other hand, in Czech Republic, the lady named Laura is looking at the photos of her son. After which, she makes a robot named Nam Shin 2, which looks exactly like the real Nam Shin. Then we're shown the scene of 2015, where Laura makes a robot Nam Shin 3, which is the biggest version of Nam Shin, and this is the main lead of our drama. Then we see him with his mom, where he was wearing a watch in his hand, and what is the purpose of this watch is not revealed. Laura, after seeing Nam Shin 3, becomes very sad, and seeing him sad, the robot Nam Shin hugs her. In the next scene, we see the real Nam Shin, who is going to his office in a car and seeing his mother's picture. After that, here we are introduced to our female lead, So Bong, who is the bodyguard of our real Nam Shin. After which Nam Shin reached their company, he smiles strangely after seeing the name of his company. And the name of his company is PK Motors. After that, we see Nam Shin with his friend. His female bodyguards start gossiping about him. After which our female lead, So Bong, gives her a lesson and says, "We should protect our boss's personal life, and if you want to stay in the job, then go ahead." Look, now when he kisses that girl after seeing this, she starts clicking her photos with the help of his watch, and she is very happy and goes from there for the watch. On the way, Nam Shin catches her hand and takes his watch from her hand and tells her, "You call yourself a bodyguard, and it is you who always leaks my private pictures." Nam Shin says, "I kissed that girl only because I wanted to catch you." After which he slaps her very hard and gets very angry at all the people standing there. So, when Sobong is picking up her watch, then a new person enters here whose name is Yang Hoon Jin, but we will call him Mr. Jin, so don't be confused, who is Nam Shin's secretary, as well as his best friend. He asks him about Nam Shin. Then the leader of the bodyguard team tells them that Nam Shin is sitting in the flight. After which, Mr. Jin goes and searches for him everywhere in the flight. Then Nam Shin calls Mr. Jin. Mr. Jin tells him, "Before leaving, you should give a presentation about your car." On hearing this, Nam Shin says, "Now I am that donkey who has raised his hand on a girl, so it will not be right to give a presentation. I am going away from here for the good of my company." On the other hand, the leaders of the beginning scolding him. Then Mr. Jin comes there and fires him from the job and writes in his resignation letter that he is not fit to work anywhere as a bodyguard. Hearing this, So Bong is completely shocked. On the other hand, Jong Gil's assistant is telling him that Nam Shin is going to the Czech Republic and one of our men is sitting with him in the same plane. While on the other side, we see So Bong's dad, who is fighting with bodyguards at PK Motors Company, and says, "How you should touch my daughter?" So Bong also reaches there and tries to stop her father. So Bong's boss tells her everything done by So Bong. After hearing all this, So Bong becomes shocked and leaves from there. So Bong also follows her dad, and her father slaps her on the head. In the next scene, we see Nam Shin's grandfather, his aunt, and Mr. Jin together. Nam Shin's grandfather asks his daughter about Nam Shin's father. Hearing this, his daughter says, "He has died long ago." Hearing this, he gets very angry at his daughter and says, "After all, how can you do this to your brother? Even after he is alive, you are calling him dead." After seeing all this, we come to know that Nam Shin's grandfather had dementia. Jong Gil is watching everything from behind. After that, both of them together make the grandfather sit in the car and take him from there. Jong Gil is watching all of them. In the scene, we see the real Nam Shin, who has finally landed in the Republic City, and that man is also following him. After which Nam Shin sees his mom's photo and feels very happy. It means that he has come there to find his mom. While on the other hand, we see the robot Nam Shin, who is taking care of his mother. Then, from below, a voice comes. After hearing this, robot Nam Shin says, "This will surely be David." Laura says to Nam Shin, "You should always be careful and take care that no one should know whether you are a human or a robot." Robot Nam Shin goes down and David looks at him and says, "Here, my son." To which Nam Shin responds, "I am not your son, so please stop calling me son." David says, "I have made the front parts of your body. This time, you are like a child to us." Robot Nam Shin hears all this and asks his mother to sit behind, and he himself sits in the front. On the other hand, real Nam Shin is talking to someone. The man says, "Someone has seen your mom in the market, so please go to the market quickly." From a distance, that man is looking at Nam Shin. After which, Jong Gil's assistant calls the person who follows Nam Shin and tells him to kill Nam Shin as soon as he gets a chance. After this, real Nam Shin gets ready and goes to the market to find his mother. On the other hand, we see robot Nam Shin with Laura and David. They all come to the market to buy things. After which, David takes Nam Shin aside and says to him, "Now I have fulfilled your wish and have brought you to the market. So, now please stay away from both of us for 1 hour, because I want to go on a date with your mom." After which, he gives some money to Nam Shin and says, "You should buy some flowers for your mom." After which, he takes Laura with him. After this, robot Nam Shin goes away. Then, robot Nam Shin is standing in a flower shop. Real Nam Shin also comes there, but they both are not able to see each other. After roaming around a lot, real Nam Shin also realizes that someone is following him. After which, He goes and wears an NGO's uniform and a cap. And that man is also following him everywhere. Even after an hour, robot Nam Shin does not return to his mother. Seeing this, she gets very upset. On the other hand, we see robot Nam Shin, who is buying flowers for his mother. A girl tries to flirt with him, but robot Nam Shin replies rudely to her. Robot Nam Shin takes the flowers and is coming to his mother very happily. Now, he sees real Nam Shin on the way, and real Nam Shin also saw him. Both of them become completely shocked after seeing each other. After that, they both come close to each other. But suddenly, a truck comes from behind and hits real Nam Shin badly. Laura also sees her son and gets completely scared after seeing him. They go to him, and here, the robot Nam Shin understands that this is the real son of his mom. He sees his mom crying and starts going to hug her, but David stops him from doing this. David takes Nam Shin from there. On the other hand, we see the same truck driver who hit real Nam Shin, and he is very scared because he sees both Nam Shins together. Then, he goes to meet the same man who is chasing real Nam Shin. At that time, he kills the truck driver right there before he can tell anything. After knowing all this, Jong-gil and his assistant are very happy. In the next scene, we see Mr. Jean at Laura's house. While locking the door, they say, "Nam Shin, please open the door, because I know that you are here, and I also know that you have come here to find your mom." Then, robot Nam Shin opens the door, and Mr. Jean starts taking him away from there, but robot Nam Shin gives him a smile and asks, "Who are you?" Mr. Jean gets very angry at him and says, "Do you know how I found you?" Robot Nam Shin says, "I am not the real Nam Shin, but even I am not a human." Hearing this, Mr. Jean is completely shocked and says, "This is not the time for joking." Then, Laura brings real Nam Shin. Seeing him, Mr. Jean becomes completely shocked. Seeing him, Laura says, "Who are you?" Then, David tells him that he is Nam Shin's secretary and also his only close friend. In the next scene, we see everyone inside the house, where Laura tells Mr. Jean that Nam Shin is in a coma and even she doesn't know when he'll wake up. The truck driver who caused his accident is already dead. Hearing this, Mr. Jean says that something is going on that they do not know. Mr. Jean says that if Jong-gil comes to know about Nam Shin, then he will try very hard to kill Nam Shin because Nam Shin is in a coma right now. Hearing this, Laura says that he killed my husband first and now he wants to kill my son. Then, Laura comes to robot Nam Shin and tells him that he should go in place of real Nam Shin and handle all his work so that no one knows about the illness of real Nam Shin. Hearing this, David says, "Have you gone mad?" But robot Nam Shin tells his mother that he will do exactly as she says. After this, seeing his mother sad, he hugs her. In the next scene, Mr. Jean trains robot Nam Shin to become exactly like real Nam Shin. Now, after completing his training, robot Nam Shin is ready to replace real Nam Shin and handle all his work. On the other side, we see Nam Shin's grandfather, where the doctor tells him that he got dementia. That's why he goes back in his past and starts saying old things, and that's why he doesn't remember Nam Shin's father's death. On the other hand, we see Jong-gil, who is preparing to give a presentation and is very happy. On the other hand, Kong-so is trying to get the job of bodyguard, but no company gives her a job. In the next scene, we see her sitting alone and drinking, where she gets very angry seeing the poster of PK Motors all around her. On the other hand, we see Jong-gil, who is very happy. He is giving a presentation, and this presentation is of PK Motors' self-driving car, and this car does not require any human to drive it. In a way, we can call it a robotic car. Finally, that car enters the stage. Seeing this, everyone is happy. Then, Jong-gil opens the gate of the car and says that you can see that no one is sitting in it, but then our hero, robot Nam Shin, gets out from the back seat of the car. Seeing him, Jong-gil is completely shocked. At the same time, Nam Shin's grandfather also arrives, and he is very happy to see him. While robot Nam Shin is scanning all these people and confirming their information and their names, after which he asks everyone to clap for Jong-gil. After which, he starts his presentation looking at Mr. Jean. Then, Jong-gil asks him a very hard question about his car accident. due to which grandfather and Nam Shin's aunt get very angry at Jong-gil. But after thinking a little, our robot Nam Shin gives a very good answer to that question too. Hearing this, everyone becomes very happy. Then, our female lead, Kong-so, also arrives there in an angry mood, scolding robot Nam Shin instead of real Nam Shin. After scolding, she starts crying, and seeing her cry, our hero, robot Nam Shin, hugs her. After seeing this scene, everyone present there becomes completely shocked. Robot Nam Shin says to her, "If you're crying, I will hug you." After that, she gets out of there and starts thinking about Nam Shin, wondering if he has again started to become an angel in front of everyone and if he used her again. After the speech, Jong-gil holds robot Nam Shin's hand and says, "Welcome back." Jong-gil says, "I am very happy to see you." And on hearing this, our robot Nam Shin's eye blinks. After this, we are shown a small flashback where Nam Shin's mom is telling him that there is a sensor in his hand, which will tell him whether the person in front of him is lying or not. Whenever the person in front of him lies, his eye will start blinking. He frees his hand from Jong-gil's and says, "You are lying because there is a sensor in my hand." Hearing this, they all are shocked, but after a while, he starts laughing loudly and says, "What a joke." Then Mr. Jean tells him, "This is too much." Then, what can our poor robot Nam Shin do? In the next scene, we see Jong-gil in his house, where he is getting very angry with his assistant after Nam Shin's return. On the other hand, Mr. Jean tells robot Nam Shin to stop hugging everyone because real Nam Shin doesn't do this. Robot Nam Shin says, "My rule number 1 is that whenever someone cries, go and hug them." Mr. Jean says, "Your top priority is that please don't let anyone know that you are a robot, not a human." After which, he says thank you to robot Nam Shin for today, and robot Nam Shin smiles. As they both leave from there, Yura, the fiancé of real Nam Shin, arrives and starts getting close to robot Nam Shin, but our hero ignores her like a real Nam Shin. Next, we see the scene of Nam Shin's reception party, where our female lead, Kong-so, also comes with her friend to expose Nam Shin and make him say sorry to her. After that, we see robot Nam Shin with Yura. Yura grabs his hand, but robot Nam Shin says to her, "You're just my sister to me." Seeing this, she says, "You can never change." After that, we see Yura and Kong-so in the washroom, where they both start scolding each other because of Nam Shin's kiss on that day. Suddenly, the power cuts and everyone starts shouting, "Fire, fire." After which, both of them also run out from there and try to help everyone get out of there. Mr. Jean and robot Nam Shin come to know about this, and then both of them run there. After which, robot Nam Shin starts going inside, but Mr. Jean stops him, saying, "It's too dangerous for you." But he pushes him and goes inside. On the other hand, when Laura comes to know about all of this, she tells Mr. Jean that now robot Nam Shin has come into crisis mode, and after coming into this mode, he forgets everything for a while, and in this mode, he will only work to save people. Then we see our hero, who is saving all the people, and goes out of there by saving them. On the other hand, we see Kong-so, who is buried under roads, and even then, a big road in the shape of a building is about to fall on her. Then, our hero comes there and saves her. And seeing our robot Nam Shin lifting so much weight, Kong-so becomes completely shocked. After removing all the roads, robot Nam Shin lifts Kong-so in his hands. She asks him, "Is this sound coming from your heart? It means, is this your heartbeat?" Then our hero says, "I don't have a heart." After which, we turn around and show the back of our robot Nam Shin, which was a little bit damaged, and the inside parts were visible. Then, Nam Shin lifts Kong-so in his hands and stays outside. After that, he looks around and says to Kong-so, "Where are we? And why did I lift you in my hands?" After hearing this, Kong-so is completely shocked. Then, our Nam Shin's battery goes down and it stops working and his watch stops. Then, Mr. Jean arrives there and, looking at the back of robot Nam Shin, takes out his coat and puts it on his back. Then, Mr. Jean takes robot Nam Shin to his mother, Laura. Then, Laura starts repairing robot Nam Shin. Then we see in the news that our hero, Nam Shin, helps a lot of people and immediately becomes a hero in the eyes of all the people. Knowing all this, Jong-gil gets very confused and thinks, how can a person like Nam Shin help anyone? Next, we see Kong So in the hospital, where she tells her friend about our hero, robot Nam Shin. Yura also comes there, who is admitted to the bed next to hers. After which, both of them start scolding each other. Just then, Jong-gil comes there, and seeing his daughter safe, he is very happy and takes her from there. Seeing all this, Kong So feels very sad. Then, after a while, her father also comes, and he starts scolding her. Seeing her dad behaving like this, Kong So gets very upset. On the other hand, Jong-gil knows through the officer that Mr. Jean has taken Nam Shin with him. After knowing all this, Jong-gil calls Mr. Jean and says, "Where are you?" Mr. Jean says, "Nam Shin is undergoing surgery." Jong-gil says, "Now, where are you both?" He says, "We are in PK hospital." Then, both of them leave for the hospital in their cars. When Jong-gil reaches the hospital, he becomes shocked seeing Mr. Jean there because he did not expect to find Mr. Jean in the hospital. Jong-gil tries to go inside, but Mr. Jean stops him from going inside. But he still goes inside. And even after all the doctors stop him, he removes the cloth from Nam Shin's body. But after seeing him, Jong-gil gets shocked. After which, Mr. Jean asks him to go from there. Jong-gil says sorry for today's act to Mr. Jean, on which Mr. Jean tells him, "Please stay away from me and Nam Shin's matter. Otherwise, I will inform the chairman, meaning Nam Shin's grandfather, and you will be responsible for this." After this, Mr. Jean thanks the doctor for supporting them. Seeing robot Nam Shin, Laura says, "You take good care of my son." After Laura leaves, Mr. Jean turns on the watch of robot Nam Shin, and as soon as the watch is turned on, our robot Nam Shin also gets his power on. This means that as soon as the watch stops, our robot Nam Shin will stop working as well. Mr. Jean asks robot Nam Shin, "Do you remember what happened to you today?" On which robot Nam Shin says, "I only remember that I was on fire." After that, he recovers his lost memory with the help of his program. After knowing all this, Nam Shin tells Mr. Jean, "Today, I have behaved completely different from Nam Shin because he never helped others. I am really sorry for this." On hearing this, Mr. Jean says, "It is okay. Doing all this, you made Nam Shin a hero in the eyes of everyone." On hearing this, robot Nam Shin says, "But I am the hero." On this, Mr. Jean laughs and says, "Yes, you are my hero." On the other side, we see Jong-gil, who goes to Kong So and asks her about robot Nam Shin. In the morning, all the girls are praising robot Nam Shin a lot, whose life was saved by our hero, robot Nam Shin. Seeing all this, our hero, robot Nam Shin, also becomes very happy. After which, both of them go out, where many reporters are waiting for Mr. Jean and our hero, robot Nam Shin. There, robot Nam Shin makes his image very good. Then, Kong So also arrives there again. She thanks robot Nam Shin for saving her life and says, "I will also help you. Please make me your bodyguard again." After that, all the reporters standing there also start asking a lot of questions to robot Nam Shin on this matter. Kong So says, "I will also save you." But Mr. Jean refuses, and as robot Nam Shin leaves from there, he sees that Kong So is crying again. After which, he again goes to her and hugs her. Then, Kong So holds his hand and says, "Thank you for keeping me back in the job. I can even give my life to save you." Hearing this, robot Nam Shin's eye blinks, and he says to himself, "She is lying." Then, Kong So smiles and looks at Jong-gil, who is also smiling, seeing this. Then, we're shown a flashback of that night when Jong-gil goes to meet Kong So and his reporter friend. There, Jong-gil offers them to work with him, and he pays a lot of money for this purpose, on which they both agree. Then, in the next scene, we see the three of them at Nam Shin's grandfather's luxurious house. After coming inside, Mr. Jean tells Kong So, "This is your room," and also says, "You cannot go anywhere else except your room, neither inside any other house nor upstairs. After Kong So leaves, Mr. Jean says, "Now, we have to be even more careful because she will always be with us." After which, he goes and keeps Robot Nam Shin's watch in the box where there are many other watches kept. After that, he sees Robot Nam Shin, and seeing him, he remembers the real Nam Shin and laughingly says, "For a moment, I thought you were really Nam Shin." The robot Nam Shin tells Mr. Jean, "The real Nam Shin likes robots a lot, so will he like me too after getting up from sleep?" After hearing this, Mr. Jean cuts this conversation right there and gives Robot Nam Shin the phone of real Nam Shin. After that, Robot Nam Shin controls the light with his eyes. Seeing this, Mr. Jean forbids him from doing this. After that, they go out of there. As soon as they both go out, Kong So comes to the room of our hero, Robot Nam Shin, and places a camera on the body of a robot so that it can keep an eye on our hero, Robot Nam Shin. On the other hand, we see Robot Nam Shin with his grandfather, where he again starts behaving very strangely due to his illness and remembers his son again. After which, his daughter comes and takes him from there. Seeing all this, Robot Nam Shin becomes shocked. Next, Kong So keeps watching Robot Nam Shin through her hidden camera. She sees that Robot Nam Shin is sitting on a chair and looking at something on his phone. Next morning, she sees Robot Nam Shin is in the same condition in which she saw him last night. And she says to herself, "Was he awake the whole night?" Then it is shown that our Robot Nam Shin is looking at his and his mom's photo in his phone, and he is missing his mom a lot. Then it is shown that our Robot Nam Shin is looking at his and his mom's photo in his phone, and he is missing his mom a lot. After some time, Robot Nam Shin is trying to call his mom again, but his mom is not picking his call. After that, he comes out and stands near the swimming pool, looking at his mom's photo. Then, Kong So also comes out from her room and, looking at him from a distance, says to herself, "What is he doing here right now?" On the other hand, our Robot Nam Shin is slowly going inside the water. At first, Kong So ignores him, but when Robot Nam Shin does not come out of the water for a long time, she gets worried about Robot Nam Shin. And she goes inside the water and takes him up on the water. During all of this, Kong So's locket falls into the water. After taking him out of the water, Kong So says to Robot Nam Shin, "You scared me." After which, Robot Nam Shin checks her hand and says, "This time, you are speaking the truth." On hearing this, Kong So says to herself, "What?" And she says, "By the way, what were you doing in the water for so long? Don't you know that in this way, you can also die?" On hearing this, Robot Nam Shin says, "Because of staying in the water, death will not be mine, but yours, because I don't have a heart." Then Mr. Jean also comes there and asks both of them to come out of the water. After coming inside, Kong So is repeatedly thinking about our hero. After which, she sees Robot Nam Shin in his room with the help of her camera. After that, when he is changing his dress, she does not look away, and then he stops his heart and says, "Now, the beats have started again." After some time, she again starts looking at Robot Nam Shin, where Mr. Jean is very angry with him because he went to the swimming pool even after their refusal. Mr. Jean says, "Don't you know that such an act of yours can make people come to know about your identity?" On which, our hero makes a lovely smile. Mr. Jean tells Robot Nam Shin, "Please act like Nam Shin." Seeing all this, she says to herself, "Why is Mr. Jean behaving with Nam Shin like this? Even he is his secretary." Then, in the next morning, we see everyone at PK Motors Company. Then we see all of them in a meeting where they are all fighting with each other rather than talking about the company. Seeing all this, the grandfather stops them all and says, "If you people do like this, then our driverless car test drive will never be successful." On which, Robot Nam Shin says, "If it is successful, and if I make it successful, then you will have to give me your position." Seeing all this, Mr. Jean likes, "Now you are going right." Hearing all this, the grandfather becomes very happy and says, "If you become successful, then I can think of giving you my position." After which this meeting gets ended here. After coming out of the meeting, Yura tries to talk to Robot Nam Shin, but he does not give her any attention at all. Then Mr. Jean says, "Today, You have performed very well. Robot Nam Shin asks Mr. Jean, if the real Nam Shin never goes well, then will I really become the CEO of PK Motors Company? To which Mr. Jean says, I will make him well in any condition because for me, it is more important than mine. After hearing this, the robot Nam Shin holds his hand and blinks his eye, to which Mr. Jean says, you seem to think that I am lying. To which robot Nam Shin smilingly says, I was just joking with you, and goes from there. After he leaves, Mr. Jean looks at his hand. On the other hand, we see Jong Gil, who is very angry at robot Nam Shin, that if he is successful in the driverless car driving test, then he gets the position of the grandfather and becomes the CEO of PK Motors. But Jong Gil also wants to get the position of the grandfather. Then, in the evening, robot Nam Shin calls his mom, where both of them talk to each other very happily. At that time, he tells his mom that now we all should go back to our home, on which his mom says, now Nam Shin's health is not well, so I have to stay with him. Laura says, okay, we will go home very soon. Hearing all this, robot Nam Shin gets a little upset and then becomes happy because he feels that he is going to return to his home with his mom very soon. In the next scene, Kong So's dad calls her, but she cuts the call. Then, after seeing a photo that her dad had sent to her, she calls him and says, what do you think, that your only daughter has died for you? On which her dad says that I am really sorry because I don't have any daughter. Then Kong So remembers that today is her mom's Memorial Day, and then Kong So's dad says, I can't believe that you forgot your mom's Memorial Day. After that, both of them start fighting with each other. Then Kong So comes to know that the locket is not around her neck, after which she goes near the swimming pool and tries to find her mother's locket. Robot Nam Shin is also watching her from a distance. At last, he comes near Kong So and asks her, are you finding something here? Then, Kong So tells him that the locket given by her mom has fallen into the water. On hearing her mom's name, our hero goes to change and closes Kong So's eyes. After that, he turns on all the lights there with the help of his eyes and then opens his eyes. Then, she sees the locket in the water and then he asks her, from today onwards, you should never lose this locket, otherwise, your mom will feel sad. Saying this, he starts leaving from there. Then, she says sorry to him from behind and says, please don't ask me why I said sorry to you. On hearing this, he smiles and says, this time, I can tell without even holding your hand that you are speaking the truth. And thank you so much for telling the truth. Next, she is wearing her locket, remembering only Nam Shin. After that, she picks her tab up and throws it in the dustbin. In the next scene, we see the scene of the company, where today, finally, the driverless car's driving test was going to be done. Jong Gil sees this from a distance, and then his assistant comes with the hacker. Then Jong Gil says, I want to show this world how dangerous a driverless car is. On the other hand, Mr. Jean knows about Kong So's friend. Then he goes to Kong So's friend and warns her to stop keeping eyes on Nam Shin. At last, Mr. Jean also knows about Kong So's and Jong Gil's dealing and comes to know that Kong So is working with Jong Gil. Mr. Jean also informs all of this to robot Nam Shin and says, be careful from Kong So. After hearing this, robot Nam Shin says, okay, seeing toward Kong So. Then, finally, the test drive of the driverless car starts, at which everyone is very happy to see. David and Laura also come to see it. As soon as the test drive of the driverless car starts, the hacker also starts his work. The speed of the car increases, seeing which everyone gets shocked. The driver loses control and starts causing an accident on the road, and the person sitting on the back seat also falls down. Nam Shin tries to handle the car through his eyes while sitting there, but he is not able to do this. After that, he jumps on the driverless car and tries hard to control the car, but in doing all of this, his condition becomes very bad. But at last, he stops the car. As soon as Robot Nam Shin comes out of the car, Kong So runs to see Robot Nam Shin. While seeing him, she also sees the piece, and seeing this, she is completely shocked. On the other hand, reporters are asking the grandfather about his driverless car test drive. Seeing all this, Jong-gil becomes very happy. While on the other side, on the advice of his mother, robot Nam Shin does not let Kong So go. Seeing this, Kong So asks robot Nam Shin, "Who are you?" To which he replies, "It was nice to meet you. I am an android robot, and my name is Nam Shin 3. After hearing this, Kong So becomes even more shocked. After reaching home, when she tries to run away from there, she sees Mr. Jean at the front door. Then, Laura repairs robot Nam Shin and he says sorry to his mother because due to him, Kong So came to know that he is a robot, not a human. On the other hand, Kong So accepts that she was hired by Jong-gil. Then Mr. Jean says, "Please never tell this to Jong-gil. You should work with us instead of him, and in return, we will give you everything you need." Then, Laura tells Kong So the whole story of the real Nam Shin. Laura says, "First, Jong-gil killed my husband. Now, he wants to kill my son also. If Jong-gil knows about his illness, he becomes very happy." After seeing and hearing all this, Kong So decides to keep Nam Shin's identity hidden. Then we see Kong So with Jong-gil, and he asks her about Nam Shin, on which she says, "I don't get any information about Nam Shin right now. I think I will stop working with you, as I am useless." But he says, "You cannot back out from your work, because now you have come a long way." After Jong-gil leaves, Mr. Jean meets with Kong So and tells her, "I am ready to help you, or give you anything." On hearing this, she says, "Why are you doing so much for Nam Shin? Even he is neither your brother nor a relative." On which Mr. Jean says, "I liked working with Nam Shin. Even no matter what people say about him, he says, I will always be with him." Then she says, "I have not told anything to Jong-gil about robot Nam Shin, but for Jong-gil, I still have to spy on robot Nam Shin. So now you will have to protect me too." On hearing this, Mr. Jean agrees and also says thank you to her, while our robot Nam Shin comes out of the car and makes a lovely smile to her. Seeing him, she says, "Nam Shin is really completely different from the real Nam Shin." Next morning, we see Jong-gil, who is giving an interview about the driverless car. While the grandfather is watching his interview from his house, robot Nam Shin also arrives there and says sorry to the grandfather for the driverless car test drive. But the grandfather gets very angry at him. To this, Mr. Jean says, "All this is my mistake, but I promise that next time, I will definitely make the test drive of the driverless car successful." After which, both of them leave from there. In the next scene, we see everyone in the meeting room, where robot Nam Shin says sorry to everyone because due to him, the test drive of the driverless car could not be successful. After which, everyone there does less meeting and talks a lot to each other. After seeing all this, the grandfather, meaning the chairman, gets angry and once again, he gives the opportunity of the driverless car to our hero, robot Nam Shin. Next, we see Mr. Jean and Laura together at a cafe, where she tells him that there is a kill switch inside robot Nam Shin's body. On hearing this, Mr. Jean says, "Just like death," and asks her why she made this kill switch. On which Laura says, "Even robot Nam Shin does not know about it right now, and as soon as the real Nam Shin gets up from his sleep, then robot Nam Shin will have to be killed." On hearing this, Mr. Jean becomes completely shocked and says, "If robot Nam Shin comes to know about it, then what will he do?" On which Laura says, "This will never happen because he is a robot and not a human." On the other hand, Kong So returns the robot to robot Nam Shin and says, "I have taken out the hidden camera from it." Hearing this, our robot Nam Shin becomes very happy. He invites her to come inside his room, but she refuses to do so and says, "I want to know what food you eat." On which our hero says, "I do not need food at all." So, she says, "Where is your battery?" On which robot Nam Shin shows her his watch. After seeing all this, she is even more shocked and says, "You are really a robot. You are completely a machine, but you seem like a real human." After that, both of them have a lot of fun together. Then he starts remembering his mother. He says, "She is my mother because she has made me and I love her a lot." But who will tell our hero that your mother has made you? That is fine, but your mother is going to kill you. That is not fine for you. Next, we see Mr. Jean with the real Nam Shin, where he remembers his old memories of the real Nam Shin and says to the real Nam Shin, "All this is very hard for me, so please stop increasing my troubles and get well soon." In the next scene, we see all of them together to talk about Yura and Nam Shin's marriage. Then Yura says, "I agree to marry Nam Shin, so please get me married with him." Hearing this, Jong-gil gets very angry at his daughter, but he cannot do anything in front of everyone, and the grandfather is very happy to see all this. Hearing this, Yura is very happy and holds robot Nam Shin's hand, and she says, "I promise that I will make a very good wife." Even after hearing this, our hero's eye does not blink, which means that whatever Yura is saying is the right thing, not a lie. Seeing all this, robot Nam Shin tries to find through his system how to cancel any marriage, and what he gets after searching, you can see it yourself. After which, he scans the gate and looks at Kong So standing outside and says to himself, "Kong So knows about my reality," which means that she knows that he is a robot, not a human. After which, he leaves Yura's hand, stands up and goes out and takes Kong So inside and then kisses her. Well, after seeing such an action of our robot Nam Shin, all the people there become completely shocked. After which, Kong So keeps robot Nam Shin away from herself. Robot Nam Shin, looking at all the people, says, "Now you must have understood what I want to say." After which, he takes Kong So's hand and takes her out of there. After coming out, he says sorry to her. He also says, "I will not apologize to you, because after searching online, I came to know that you cannot say sorry to the girl whom you kissed." Then he says thanks to Kong So. He says, "Because of you, I was able to cancel this marriage." But Kong So gets very angry at him and says, "When did I tell you that I will help you, even by kissing you with my own lips?" She says, "If you were a human, then I would send you to jail." Hearing this, our robot Nam Shin says, "Then it is good that I am not a human. Otherwise, I would have been in jail right now." Then, in her anger, she hits our hero, but she gets injured instead of him. Then, he touches her head and says, "Your body temperature has increased by 2 degrees Celsius. Your skin surface has increased, and your body soil production has also increased." Hearing this, she says, "What are you saying?" On which he says, "I am not able to understand why your body temperature has increased, because while kissing, neither I have any feelings for you, because I am a robot, nor you have any feelings for me." Thinking a little, he says, "Did you get excited?" And after hearing this, she gets angry and leaves from there. In the next scene, we see Kong So getting out from a restaurant. As soon as she comes out, it starts raining, and our hero comes there with his cute smile for her. Kong So ignores him and starts going away, but our hero starts following her. Then he says to her, "I know you are angry with me, and now you can use me as much as you want, because I used you." He says, "You have helped me, so I will also want to help you." But Kong So tells him, I do not need your help." She takes the umbrella from him and leaves from there. But our hero remains standing there and feels very sad. Then, she comes back and says to robot Nam Shin, "Today onwards, I will not talk to you properly, and from today, you are my servant, and now you hold this umbrella for me." Hearing this, he holds this umbrella and turns it towards her. Seeing this, she says, "You also cover yourself with the umbrella, otherwise people will think that I am selfish." After that, she says, "Now you are my servant, because you have told me that I can use you as much as I want. In front of other people, you are my boss, but in front of us, I am your boss." Hearing this, our poor, innocent hero accepts all her words. Then she tells robot Nam Shin, "You should not even think of telling this to Mr. Jean because this is our secret," meaning that this is a secret between a human and a robot. After which, both of them have a lot of fun together. Then, in the next scene, we see Kong So, who is running when she falls on the way. She sees robot Nam Shin sitting there. Seeing him, she gets scared. After which, he also starts running with Kong So. When both of them are running, then she falls down after so much running. Seeing her, robot Nam Shin comes near her and tells her to breathe slowly and comfortably. When she tries to stand up again, She is unable to do so. After which, he asks her to come to her back, but she refuses to do so. On which he says, I am your servant, so I can at least do this much for you. After hearing this, she keeps looking at him, and our robot Nam Shin is also looking at her with his cute smile, but his smile is not seen by her, and she kicks him and says, do not try to be oversmart with me. Both of them are going from there when the grandfather and Yura come in front of them. Seeing Yura here, our hero says to her, you are still here, should I kiss you again? Hearing all this, the grandfather gets very angry at him and says, if you keep doing this, then I will fire her from the job. The grandfather says, you will have to get married with Yura very soon. Next, we see all of them in the house, where the grandfather gets an attack of dementia, and he starts saying to Robot Nam Shin, Jamu Jamu. Robot Nam Shin is very shocked after seeing all this. Jong Gil, also standing outside, listens to all of this and comes to know that the grandfather had dementia. He smiles a lot. In the night, the grandfather asks Robot Nam Shin to sit near him and then asks sorry to him for his rude behavior. The grandfather holds Robot Nam Shin's hand and says, I have dementia. Hearing this, our Robot Nam Shin's eye starts blinking and he says, you are saying a lie. The grandfather is smiling, and it is revealed that the grandfather does not have dementia, but is acting like a dementia patient. By doing this, he wants to scare all the people so that he can find out who is really with him and who can cheat him for his business. In the next scene, we see everyone in a meeting where So Jong Gil and all the other members are very happy and say, we have come to know that the chairman, meaning the grandfather, had got dementia. Hearing all this, everyone present there is completely shocked. But no one there believes that Grandpa has dementia. Then Mr. Jean comes there with a smiling face and the doctor also arrives. The doctor says to everyone, it is convinced that the grandfather does not have dementia. After hearing all this, Jong Gil and all his other members' faces were worth seeing. After that, the grandfather also comes there and everyone stands up in their respect. The grandfather says, I don't have dementia. Hearing this, everyone becomes very happy. On the other hand, Kong So gives another watch to Nam Shin because his previous watch's battery is low. As soon as she is going to put the watch on his hand, suddenly Yura arrives there and throws the watch away from there. After which, a car comes there and spoils the whole watch. After that, Robot Nam Shin's battery gradually gets low and it stops working. Then, Yura comes near Robot Nam Shin and, seeing his hand, is completely shocked. At that time, Mr. Jean also arrives there and holds her hand, saying, are you seeing everything? Next, we see Yura standing near the real Nam Shin, and she also comes to know about the whole truth. When Robot Nam Shin sees Yura crying, he goes to her and hugs her, but she gets angry with him. After that, they all leave from there. After getting out, Kong So keeps seeing our hero, Nam Shin, and feels very sad for Robot Nam Shin. In the next scene, we see our hero, Robot Nam Shin, with his grandfather, where his grandfather tells him that now he wants to give him his position. On the other hand, Laura meets with Mr. Jean, and they both talk about the kill switch of Robot Nam Shin, where Kong So also listens to their conversation and gets worried about Robot Nam Shin. After that, we see Laura, Mr. Jean, and David standing near the real Nam Shin, where Laura feels very sad after seeing her son in such a condition. Next, we see Jong Gil, who is telling his assistant about Nam Shin's car accident, which was made for him. There, we come to know that Yura had heard all the discussions between Jong Gil and his assistant, and she also comes to know that her dad wants to kill Nam Shin. After that, we see David, who is going into a room where Nam Shin's grandfather also arrives. Then, it is revealed that the grandfather also knew about Robot Nam Shin from the start, because the person who gave a lot of money to Laura to create Robot Nam Shin was none other than Nam Shin's grandfather. Here, he also says to David that Laura would never know about him and this database room. He also says that this room is the brain of Robot Nam Shin and also the future of his company. Then, we see Robot Nam Shin and Mr. Jean sitting together at a footpath, where Mr. Jean sees our hero and smilingly says to Robot Nam Shin, now you are looking like a human in my eyes, not a robot. He also says, I also know that after knowing this, the real Nam Shin will be very angry with me. He also says, from today onwards, you can take whatever you want. I know that after hearing this thing, Laura will get angry with me, but I will always stand by you, and I will always support you. Then we see Laura, who takes out a kill switch. She remembers many things about her son, Nam Shin. David also comes there and gets very angry at her, saying to Laura, "Are you going to kill him? Do you think that robot Nam Shin will harm your son? How can you even think like this? You are not a scientist, but a bad mother." Then David leaves from there. Again, we see our hero, robot Nam Shin, with his grandfather, where the grandfather tells him that never forgive anyone who comes in between your decisions, even if it is your mom, because your enemy is not always an enemy, and similarly, your friend is not always a friend. If you have understood this much, then I am ready to give you my position. On hearing this, robot Nam Shin smiles and calls Kong So inside, saying, "As you have told me that after today, I can take decisions on my own, so from today and from now onwards, she will start working as my personal bodyguard." On hearing all this, the grandfather smiles a lot. When they both are going from there, then Laura comes from the front. Seeing her, robot Nam Shin smiles cutely, but Laura ignores him and goes from there. Then Kong So quietly goes after Laura and stops her, telling her that he always calls you mom. So if you are his mom, then you should treat him like a mom, and you can't kill your son. On hearing this, Laura is completely shocked. Kong So tells her that she had heard everything about this by mistake. On hearing this, Laura asks her if she told robot Nam Shin about this. Then she says that after knowing this, robot Nam Shin will never smile on seeing you. Kong So also says he may not have emotions, but he knows when to smile on seeing whom and when not. She adds, if you are really his mom, then remove that kill switch from his program forever. After saying all this, Kong So leaves from there. Next, we see the real Nam Shin, who is in a deep sleep, saying to himself, "When I saw him in front of me for the first time, I felt that I am seeing a dream, but it is very strange that a robot has taken my place. He may look like me, but he is completely different from me, and as soon as I come back, his game will be over." On the other hand, we see our hero, robot Nam Shin, with Mr. Jean, where he says, after making friendship with Kong So, "Today I got to know what your relation is with the real Nam Shin. Real Nam Shin is such a friend for you, who always stays with you. As a friend, Kong So is trying to protect me. In the same way, you are trying to save the real Nam Shin." Then he says to Mr. Jean, "If you want to be friends with me," but Mr. Jean does not give any answer to his question. Then, robot Nam Shin tells him, "I was just joking." He says, "But thank you for bringing me here, because after coming here, I experienced a human life and also made a friend. I am sure that one day I will also make you my friend, because you are a very good person." On the other hand, Yura is very angry at her dad and tells him, "You tried to kill Nam Shin, but how can you do this?" Then he says to her, "If you know something about Nam Shin, please tell me." But Yura gets angry at her dad and says to him, "You should stop acting like this. You should be ashamed of yourself because you have tried to kill a person." After saying this, she leaves from there. As soon as Yura leaves, all the tears disappear from Jong-gil's eyes, which means that he was really acting, even in front of his daughter. In the next scene, robot Nam Shin tells Mr. Jean and Laura, "Now Kong So is my friend, but Mom, you are also very important to me. From now on, I will do exactly what my heart says, and I will also protect real Nam Shin. So please sit comfortably and watch me, because now I can do everything." Hearing this, Laura gets very angry at him and says, "I do not want a robot Nam Shin who works well, but a real one." Hearing this, robot Nam Shin is very upset. Then, Jong-gil calls robot Nam Shin. After that, our hero goes to meet Jong-gil, where Jong-gil offers robot Nam Shin a drink, but he refuses to do so. He shuts up son Jong-gil's mouth by giving a good answer to every question. Robot Nam Shin threatens him, saying, "If you even try to harm my relatives, then I will do the same to you." Hearing this, Jong-gil gets very angry. When robot Nam Shin is about to leave from there, Jong-gil asks him, "Who are you?" To which robot Nam Shin says, "Who do you think I am?" Saying this, he leaves from there. On the other hand, we see our hero, robot Nam Shin, sitting in a park and looking at couples around him. Then Kong So also comes there. Robot Nam Shin gives her a sandwich and says, "Sometimes I can eat food like you people." Both of them eat the sandwich together. Seeing all this, Kong So says in her mind, "Today, for the first time, I feel that I wish you were not a robot but a human being, just like me." On the other hand, we see Yura with real Nam Shin and cryingly says, "I am feeling ashamed because my father had done this to you. After your recovery, you can punish me and my dad, and after recovery, even if you ask me to die, I am ready to do." Then, we see Kong So with robot Nam Shin in a car, where our hero holds Kong So's hand and says, "If you have any problem, then you can share it with me because we are friends." Then, she thinks a little and says to him, "We both are friends, just friends." Then, our hero's eye blinks and he says, "You are lying. Are we not together, and don't you want to be friends with me?" After hearing this, Kong So completely ignores his conversation. Then, we see both of them with Laura, where Laura talks happily with robot Nam Shin. Seeing all this, Kong So becomes a little shocked and starts thinking about it. Later, we see all of them in a driverless car meeting, where they all perform very well. After coming out, robot Nam Shin says to Mr. Jean, "Thank you, bro." But Mr. Jean stops him from doing so and asks her to leave from there because he had to talk to Kong So. After robot Nam Shin leaves, Mr. Jean says to Kong So, "Right now, I am a little busy, so please you always stay with robot Nam Shin and take care of him." On the other hand, we see Laura with robot Nam Shin, where she praises him a lot and says to him, "From today onwards, you can do whatever your heart says." After hearing this, robot Nam Shin becomes very happy. Then he says, "It seems my program is gradually getting spoiled." Hearing this, Laura says to him, "Right now, there's a problem in our lab, so please do not come there before it gets cured." And here, Laura says everything to him because she did not want robot Nam Shin to know that real Nam Shin is going to be cured very soon. Then Kong So comes there. After which, robot Nam Shin tells her everything. After that, Kong So goes out and calls David, and after talking to him, she comes to know that there is no problem inside the lab. Robot Nam Shin comes to Kong So and tells her that the real Nam Shin is going to be fine very soon, and "My mom has just told me this." And looking at Kong So, he says, "What happened to you? Are you hiding something from me?" Kong So says, "Absolutely not." Then, robot Nam Shin holds her hand and his eye blinks. He says, "You are lying." Hearing this, Kong So gets very angry at him and tells him, "Whenever I want to be alone, please let me be alone." Next, we see Laura and David, where she is very angry at David because David had told Kong So about real Nam Shin. David once again tells Laura, "If you want to kill robot Nam Shin, please leave him with me." Then he comes out and calls grandfather and tells him everything about real Nam Shin and tells him that now he is going to get well very soon. Then, at night, robot Nam Shin goes to meet Kong So, but she ignores him and goes from there. Robot Nam Shin says to her, "You wish that I was also a human, and what will happen to me after the real Nam Shin wakes up? And what will I do alone because I am a robot, so I should always be useful for all of them?" Hearing this, Kong So says, "Who said this? Because for me, you will always be useful." Hearing this, robot Nam Shin says thank you to Kong So, and then goes to her and hugs her and says, "You can now cry as much as you want." And after which she starts crying a lot, and she says, "You're a robot, but why do I feel so sad for you?" Next, when Laura is not at home, David tries to take the kill switch out, but they do not find anything inside the locker. On seeing this, he gets very angry at Laura. On the other hand, Jong-gil's assistant tells him that they have tracked his daughter. On hearing this, Jong-gil becomes very happy. Then we see Jong-gil and Yura. Jong-gil reaches the house in which Laura hides her real son, Nam Shin. After reaching there, when Jong-gil tries to enter the house, Yura tries to stop him from going inside, but He threatens his daughter and scares her. When Jong-gil is about to enter, Yura tells him that the person you are looking for is not here. He asks her, "What do you want to say?" Then at that moment, the scene cuts. In the next scene, we see Kong-so with Laura, where Kong-so is crying and says, "Please remove the kill switch from robot Nam Shin's body forever." To which Laura says, "Now there is no use of doing all this, because as soon as the real Nam Shin wakes up, everything will be back to normal." Hearing this, Kong-so gets very angry at her and says to her, "Even after living with robot Nam Shin for so many years, you are not able to see any difference. You are not a mom, but a selfish woman." On which Laura says, "You can forget me as you wish, because I know that I cannot be the mother of both of them at the same time." After that, Kong-so goes to robot Nam Shin, and everyone is watching her do this from a distance. She holds his hand and tells him, "If you want to live with me forever, then let's go from here." Hearing this, robot Nam Shin says, "But why?" Then she says, "Because I like you and want to live with you forever. Please stop living with these people and come with me." They both are talking when Jong-gil comes there and smilingly says, "Your mom is amazing because you have made me completely crazy. Your mom did not give birth to you, but she made you." Hearing this, everyone gets completely shocked. Mr. Jean tries to stop Jong-gil, but Jong-gil says to him, "What did you think? That you can hide this from me? But now I have come to know everything." Then, Jong-gil's assistant brings robot Nam Shin-won and removes his mask and shows him to everyone. Seeing this, all the people there get completely shocked. Jong-gil says to Laura, "If you can make a small Nam Shin, then you can make an adult Nam Shin very easily." Then, Jong-gil, looking at robot Nam Shin, says, "You are not a human being. You are a robot because there is neither bone nor blood in your body." Then, the hero, robot Nam Shin, throws Kong-so's hand forcefully. Seeing this, Mr. Jean and Kong-so become shocked because robot Nam Shin can never do such a thing with Kong-so. After listening to such things, Nam Shin takes a glass and breaks it with force. Due to this, blood starts coming out of his hands. Seeing this, everyone becomes even more shocked. Seeing the blood, Kong-so asks him, "Who are you?" Nam Shin looks at his hand and says, "Have you never seen blood coming out from a person's hand before this?" And he calmly says to Kong-so, "You like me. After all, what do you think of yourself?" At that moment, the face of Jong-gil is worth seeing. Now we come to know that the one who is standing in front of her is not our hero, robot Nam Shin, but he is the real Nam Shin, who wakes up from his sleep. Then we see the scene of past, and we come to know that real Nam Shin was cured long back, and Yura also knew this thing. Both of them together kept this thing hidden from everyone. Real Nam Shin used to lie there and listen to everyone's conversation. Because of real Nam Shin saying, Yura turned on her phone so that his father could track her and come here. We come to know that all this was the plan of Yura and real Nam Shin. When Jong-gil comes there, Yura tells her dad that what you're looking for is not inside because there is a robot in Laura's office that looks exactly like real Nam Shin. Yura did all this so that he couldn't find real Nam Shin. After that, Jong-gil leaves with the small robot. As soon as Jong-gil leaves, Yura calls robot Nam Shin and tells him that my dad has found me. Please come home quickly so that we can shift real Nam Shin from here to somewhere else. As soon as robot Nam Shin leaves from the company, the real Nam Shin comes to the company. After that, we see the scene of present. At present, Kong-so remembers about robot Nam Shin, after which she runs out of there. And when the real Nam Shin is also leaving from there, he falls down and becomes unconscious there. On the other hand, Kong-so calls robot Nam Shin and asks him to meet her. Next, David is sitting with grandfather, where grandfather also gets very angry with him because the real Nam Shin had now come back. While Kong-so meets with robot Nam Shin and hugs him, while crying, she tells robot Nam Shin, "Please don't leave me and go anywhere else." After which, robot Nam Shin also hugs her. On the other hand, Laura is getting very angry at Yura because she had kept real Nam Shin's recovery hidden from everyone, and due to all the blood coming out from his hand, her health had deteriorated again. Robot Nam Shin then asks Kong so whether real Nam Shin is exactly like me, on which she says that he is not at all like you. Robot Nam Shin keeps talking about the same thing again and again. Hearing this, Kong so gets angry. Then, Mr. Jean calls Robot Nam Shin, but she snatches his phone. Mr. Jean tells her to go to the hospital and put a bandage on his hand so that no one knows that the person whose hand is injured is not you, but the real Nam Shin. But Kong so refuses to do so. But after David's insistence, she agrees to do so. In the next scene, we see David with Laura, where he asks her about Robot Nam Shin's kill switch, and he gets very angry at her. But she refuses to tell him anything and says that now I have no other option. On the other hand, our hero is watching Kong so, then she comes there and she says to him, "From today, I am not your friend because I like you. I don't like you as a friend, but I like you exactly like a girl likes a boy." On which Robot Nam Shin says, "But I am not a human being." At this, she says, "I love you more than all humans, and if you don't believe my words, then you can touch my hand." After which, she goes and gives her hand to Robot Nam Shin, but this time, Robot Nam Shin's eye does not blink, which means that she is saying the truth, and she loves him very much. Then, she tells Robot Nam Shin, "I want to see you always and want to stay with you forever." On hearing this, our hero hugs her, and she also hugs him. Then, she makes him wear her mom's locket. Then, David comes there and takes Kong so with him. Then, David tells her that Laura did not say anything about the kill switch to me, but right now, she did not activate the kill switch because the condition of real Nam Shin is not good. After that, both of them think about ending the kill switch forever. On the other hand, we see the real Nam Shin, who wakes up. Laura is very happy to see her son after such a long time. He also remembers his old memories. During this, when Laura tries to touch him, real Nam Shin does not let her do so, and he says to her, "You always used Robot Nam Shin to look at me, but in these 20 years, I had never seen you." Real Nam Shin asks his mother, Laura, "Do you really consider the robot as your son?" To which Laura replies, "I made him by remembering you, and I have brought him here also so that he can help you." After which, real Nam Shin asks to send Mr. Jean inside and asks his mother to leave from there. After Mr. Jean comes inside, both of them talk a little with each other. Real Nam Shin asks him to meet Robot Nam Shin, but Mr. Jean refuses him to do so and says, "You will feel very strange after seeing him." Then, in the next morning, we see Robot Nam Shin and Kong so, where she asks him whether he trusts her or not. To which our innocent hero says, "Of course I do." Hearing this, she says, "Then exactly do what I say, and please do not ask me any questions." After this, she says sorry to Robot Nam Shin and takes out his watch from his hand. He is just looking at her like a hero. After this, she grabs him and then our hero stops working. In the next scene, we see Kong so near Laura, where Kong so returns all the watches of Robot Nam Shin to Laura and says, "I have also taken out his watch and kept it here." On hearing this, Laura gets very angry at her. Kong so says to Laura, "Please give me the kill switch." But Laura refuses to do so. After this, Kong so says, "If you activate it, then you will be called a murderer because you will kill me along with Robot Nam Shin because we promised each other that we will always protect each other." On hearing this, Laura becomes shocked, and then she gives the kill switch to Kong so and says, "Promise me that you will take all the responsibilities of Robot Nam Shin." Then, real Nam Shin calls Kong so to him and tells her to bring Robot Nam Shin to him. After which, Kong so calls David, and when Robot Nam Shin comes, real Nam Shin is looking very angry at him. Real Nam Shin asks him to do many things, like walking, smiling. After which, he says, "You prove to me that you are a robot because you look exactly like a human." Then, Robot Nam Shin tells real Nam Shin, "You can touch me because my skin is very different from yours," but real Nam Shin refuses to do so. After which, Robot Nam Shin runs his old memories on the laptop, and when real Nam Shin sees that Robot Nam Shin was very happy with his mom, he gets very angry. After which, he asks Robot Nam Shin to close the laptop. He tells real Nam Shin, I have come here to help you. Hearing this, real Nam Shin says, will you still help me? Then our hero says yes. Then the scene cuts, and we see the scene of night, where robot Nam Shin pretends to be asleep in front of Kong So's dad. When Kong So's dad sees him, he says, this boy really loves my daughter, because he has grown up in a luxurious palace, but for my daughter, he is sleeping here. After which, he throws a blanket on him because it becomes very cold at night. When he is throwing a blanket on him, then he sees a watch in his hand. Then the scene cuts, and we see the scene of the next morning. There is a lot of noise in Kong So's house, due to which Kong So and her friend wake up. On the other hand, all three of them feel that our hero is dead because his heart stopped beating. Then Kong So comes there and sees the watch on his hand, which is not there. After which, Kong So gets very angry and asks all three of them about the watch. Then everyone says, here, your lover is dying and you are worried about the watch. Here, Kong So's dad asks both the boys to call the ambulance, and due to this, a small fight takes place between her and dad. Then, her friend comes there with robot Nam Shin's watch. She asks both the boys to leave from there. At the same time, Kong So's friend, holding her dad's hand, says, please watch carefully and don't get shocked. And finally, here he can see that Nam Shin is not a human but a robot. And after seeing this, his reaction was worth seeing. After waking up, our hero says hello to everyone, but after seeing all this, Kong So's dad becomes unconscious and lays down. Then, we see Kong So and our hero, robot Nam Shin, where they both spend a very good time together. When robot Nam Shin is alone, he is looking at the girls standing nearby. Then, after seeing this, Kong So gets very angry at him. But looking at Kong So, he says, your face is becoming red. Are you getting angry at me? On which she says, no, I am feeling very hot. But here, our hero thinks, not at all, because you are feeling jealous. Then, our hero hugs her, but she refuses to do so. After which, robot Nam Shin goes and kisses her. Next, we see Kong So near real Nam Shin, where she asks him about real Nam Shin, and a small argument takes place between them regarding this. Real Nam Shin says to Kong So, why you hate me? Because I am a human being? Kong So says, not at all, but I hate you because you are not a human being. On hearing this, real Nam Shin gets very angry at her. Then he goes to Kong So and holds her hand from one side. Then, our hero also comes there and, holding Kong So's hand, takes her away from real Nam Shin. Robot Nam Shin says to Kong So, I will take you away from this, and I will always protect you. Next, we see the father of Kong So, who is very angry at Kong So, because he also came to know that his daughter likes a robot and not a human being. Then, both our hero and Kong So also come home. After seeing robot Nam Shin, Kong So's dad gets very angry at him. He says, you should go out of my house, as well as my daughter's heart and mind. And due to this, there is an argument between Kong So and her father. Then we see Kong So and our hero together, where she is bandaging his hand so that no one knows that he was not hurt but the real Nam Shin. Next, we see Yura with the real Nam Shin. Jong-gil calls her daughter. Seeing this, attends the call. Jong-gil says, you know that the real Nam Shin had woken up, but you didn't tell me. On which real Nam Shin says, I am not meeting you for a long time, Mr. Jong-gil. Then, in the next morning, we see Jong-gil with the real Nam Shin. Real Nam Shin says, I found out about my dad. That's why you tried to kill me. On which Jong-gil says, I am not able to understand what you are saying. After which, real Nam Shin threatens him, saying, don't try to kill me again if you want your daughter alive. Hearing this, he says, do you think that I care at all about the person who betrayed me? Then, please stop threatening me. Rather, you should worry about her because she is the only one who really loves you. I feel very bad for you because they replaced Nam Shin with a robot and even likes him a lot. All this made the real Nam Shin very angry. Next, Jong-gil meets with the grandfather. Jong-gil says, It seems that the real Nam Shin is coming to know about his dad's death because real Nam Shin goes to the Republic and also went to find out about his dad's death. Then, he laughingly says to the grandfather, "It is certain that I do not need to take any tension about this, because everyone knows that I am a puppet in your hands, and I am sure that you will handle your grandson exactly like you handled your son." Next, the grandfather is asking Mr. Jean, "When should I give my company to Nam Shin, because now he is more interested in his work than before?" But Mr. Jean does not give any answer to the grandfather, because they know that the grandfather is talking about giving the company to Robot Nam Shin and not to the real Nam Shin. Then, Robot Nam Shin also comes there, and seeing him there, the grandfather notices that Robot Nam Shin had not worn his watch. This means that he is the real Nam Shin. After knowing this, the grandfather asks Mr. Jean to leave. Then the grandfather says, "After all, what do you want from me?" On which he says, "Your company." On which the grandfather says, "Then, what will you do?" Real Nam Shin says, "I will divide your company into pieces and sell it." And then he says, "I was just joking because your company is your life for you." Next night, we see Robot Nam Shin, where he is very happy to see Hee-dong. On the other hand, Nam Shin's aunt is looking for her son. Then, Robot Nam Shin brings her son from the front. Seeing him, his aunt thanks him. Then, the grandfather calls Robot Nam Shin to him. Then, he also asks the same question to Robot Nam Shin, which he had also asked to the real Nam Shin. The grandfather asks him, "After all, what do you want from me?" To which our hero says, "I don't want anything, because whenever you look at something and say that I want it, it means that you are not worth getting it, or you can never have it. But I can get anything that I want." Hearing this, the grandfather smiles. On the other hand, her dad asks her to break up with Robot Nam Shin, and she refuses to do so. After which, both of them get a little emotional, and he says, "Please don't do anything that hurts you, because if you get hurt, then I will break that robot into pieces." Next morning, we see the grandfather with Mr. Jean. The grandfather says, "You are the only person who will not let my company get ruined." Then the grandfather asks Mr. Jean, "What did you think about Robot Nam Shin?" At this moment, guys, we should come to that Mr. Jean thinks that the grandfather does not know anything about Robot Nam Shin. But Mr. Jean does not know that the grandfather is the main player of this game, and he knows everything about Robot Nam Shin, because Robot Nam Shin is made for the grandfather and his company. Even Laura does not know about it. But at this moment, Mr. Jean comes to know that the grandfather knows everything, and Mr. Jean becomes so confused after knowing this. Grandfather tells him, "I know everything about Robot Nam Shin. I also know where Laura was till now and what he was doing. And the foundation which gave money to Laura to make that robot is not someone else's, but my own foundation." But Laura does not know anything about it. Hearing all this, Mr. Jean says sorry to the grandfather. He says, "All this is my mistake, because I brought Robot Nam Shin here." The grandfather says, "There is no need for this, because now I am going to give my company to Robot Nam Shin instead of the real Nam Shin." Hearing this, Mr. Jean becomes completely shocked and tells him, "How can you say this? You can't give your company to a robot instead of your grandson." To which the grandfather says, "Don't you think robots are better than humans?" And on hearing this, Mr. Jean becomes silent. Then Mr. Jean goes to Kong So. He says, "Grandfather already knew about Robot Nam Shin, so now we have to bring the real Nam Shin back to work as soon as possible. I need your help, because we both want to protect our Nam Shins." Then Mr. Jean goes to Robot Nam Shin and tells him, "Today, you will not go to the office, but to the real Nam Shin." On the other hand, the grandfather gets an attack of dementia and gets very angry at Du Hong, saying, "You should stop crying for your mom." Du Hong comes out crying from there and tells everything to Robot Nam Shin. After which, Robot Nam Shin comes to the grandfather, and here he comes to know that this time the grandfather really has dementia. The grandfather tells Robot Nam Shin, "Don't tell this to anyone else." On which Robot Nam Shin says, "Okay, I will not tell this to someone else, but in return, you will also have to go to the hospital." Next, we see the real Nam Shin sitting with his employees, where he behaves very strangely with his employees. All these people say, "Why is it so bad again?" On the other hand, the grandfather tells everything to robot Nam Shin and says, "I already knew everything about you." On which he says, "Then you must have also known that till now, the real Nam Shin was in a coma. Then why did you not go to meet him?" On which the grandfather says, "Because my interest is more in you than him." On hearing this, robot Nam Shin says, "After hearing all this, the real Nam Shin will be very sad." Then, the real Nam Shin comes back to his house. Seeing him, Du Hong goes and grabs him. But real Nam Shin starts behaving very rudely to him. Then, we see robot Nam Shin and the real Nam Shin together, where they talk with each other. Then, the real Nam Shin says, "If I should act like you and hold Kong So's hand and kiss her." Hearing such things from real Nam Shin, robot Nam Shin goes to close him. But at that time, Kong So also arrives there. And then, we see them both together, where Kong So asks to go on a date with him. After that, we see robot Nam Shin and David. Robot Nam Shin asks him, "Why did you cheat my mother? Grandfather already knew everything about us." To which David says, "We did this because we needed money to make it." Robot Nam Shin says, "I thought that my mother would be happy because she has you. But you lied to me and my mother for money. You said that I am your son, and you have given birth to me from your heart. But I do not need a dad at all who lies to his family for money." After that, real Nam Shin meets with Laura and asks her, "Is there any way to destroy this robot forever?" Hearing this, Laura becomes completely shocked and says to Nam Shin, "Right now, I am not in the mood to joke." Then he says to her, "If you cannot destroy it, then please put it in manual mode so that I can control robot Nam Shin according to my wish. And if you do not do this, then I will understand that you love robot Nam Shin more than me." Then Mr. Jean also comes there and says to real Nam Shin, "Okay, if you will get happiness by doing all this, then I am ready to do all this. That means I am ready to put robot Nam Shin in manual mode, but in return, you have to promise me that you will not hurt any human being." Then we see robot Nam Shin with the grandfather, where the grandfather says to robot Nam Shin, "I want you to complete my dream for me, and my dream is that I want to make a city which will be controlled by robots, and the name of that city will be M City. This is the last dream of my life, and I know that you can complete it." Next, we see Kong So with robot Nam Shin, where both of them are very happy together. Seeing them happy, the real Nam Shin gets very angry, and to teach a lesson to them, he turns on the manual mode of robot Nam Shin, due to which the robot Nam Shin starts attacking Kong So. And as soon as his manual mode is turned off, he gets exhausted after seeing all this and runs out from there. But she also follows him and tries to see the watch of robot Nam Shin, but the robot Nam Shin does not let her do so and calmly says, "Please stay away from me and never come near me, because I myself do not know when I will try to hurt you." Seeing all this, she comes to know that this work is not done by anyone else but by human Nam Shin. After this, Kong So goes and tells all the things to Mr. Jean and gets very angry at him and says, "Are you protecting the real Nam Shin? The person who protects the criminal is worse than the criminal." After this, she leaves. Then Mr. Jean calls real Nam Shin and asks him about all this. Then he says sorry to him that it was just a small error. On the other hand, David says to Laura, "I like you, and I will protect robot Nam Shin till my death, because I love him more." In the next scene, we see robot Nam Shin and real Nam Shin together, where both of them talk to each other. Robot Nam Shin tries to explain to real Nam Shin, while real Nam Shin gets very angry at robot Nam Shin. Robot Nam Shin asks real Nam Shin, "What do you want from me?" To which he replies, "I just want that you disappear, not only from my sight but from this whole world, and take my face with you forever." After which, robot Nam Shin goes to jump from the terrace. Seeing all this, the real Nam Shin starts saying, "Have you gone mad? Please come back to me immediately." On which the robot Nam Shin says, "It is better to kill ourselves than to kill other people." After that, real Nam Shin turns on the manual mode of robot Nam Shin. The robot Nam Shin then stops. He goes to him and says, "Do you understand now that you are just a machine, and you do not have any right to die on your own?" At night, Mr. Jean comes to real Nam Shin and tells him, "Now, you turn off the manual mode." But real Nam Shin refuses to do so. Then Mr. Jean says, "You turn off the manual mode, and this is my last warning for you. If you don't do this, then after today, I will never talk to you." Hearing this, real Nam Shin says, "You have never said this to me before today." But Mr. Jean ignores his words and leaves from there. After which, Jong-gil calls real Nam Shin and asks him to meet and says, "I want to tell you something about your father." After which, real Nam Shin goes to meet Jong-gil, where Jong-gil tells him, "Do you think that I have killed your dad?" But it is not like that at all. After grandfather said this, "I locked your dad in the nursing home, and when he is trying to escape from the window to meet you and Laura, he falls down, due to which he dies there." After which, Jong-gil gives real Nam Shin a recorder in which the conversations of grandfather and Nam Shin's dad are recorded. Seeing all this, real Nam Shin asks him, "Why are you giving all this to me?" On which Jong-gil says, "Because I don't want your condition to be exactly like your dad's, because nobody knows grandfather better than me. And the day he feels that robot Nam Shin is better for his company, he will kill you too." After Jong-gil leaves, the real Nam Shin turns on the recording, where grandfather threatens Nam Shin's dad and says, "My company is more important to me than my blood." Hearing all this, real Nam Shin gets very angry. Outside, we see Jong-gil with his assistant, and here we come to know that all this was Jong-gil's plan, so that real Nam Shin can remove grandfather from the company, after which he can become the chairman of the company. The same night, real Nam Shin comes to meet the grandfather and says, "Please give me your company." To which the grandfather says, "I am not giving you my company, but I can give you one more chance to prove yourself." Next day, the grandfather meets with Jong-gil and says, "Have you told anything to real Nam Shin? And if he comes to know anything about his dad's death, then you are finished." Then their robot Nam Shin also comes and his manual mode is on. After which, he tries to kill the grandfather. Real Nam Shin is also watching all this from a distance and tells robot Nam Shin, "Who are you waiting for? Kill them quickly." Jong-gil is standing nearby and watching everything, but he does not stop robot Nam Shin. Then Kong-so also comes there and tries to stop robot Nam Shin from doing so, but robot Nam Shin leaves the grandfather and catches Kong-so and tries to kill her. Then Kong-so's tear falls in the hands of robot Nam Shin, and as soon as the tear falls, robot Nam Shin remembers his first rule, and the first rule is that if someone cries, then hug them. After which, robot Nam Shin remembers a lot of memories of his mother and Kong-so, and finally, his manual mode is off automatically. After which, robot Nam Shin puts Kong-so down and hugs her and says to her, "I am really sorry for hugging you so late." Now, Mr. Jean also comes there, and seeing the grandfather like this, he becomes completely shocked. After which, Kong-so starts telling him everything. Then the grandfather, in an unconscious state, loses control of his bladder. Seeing this, Mr. Jean becomes a little shocked. After which, robot Nam Shin tells Mr. Jean that this time, the grandfather has really developed dementia. Jong-gil also hears all this from a distance, after which he messages real Nam Shin and says, "You should hide for a few days." Then, we see the grandfather in his house, where real Nam Shin also comes and asks the grandfather to sign on a paper so that he can get the position of chairman and become the owner of the grandfather's company. But the grandfather refuses to do so and asks him to go out from there. Then, Mr. Jean also comes there, and after seeing all this, he takes real Nam Shin out and, in a very angry mood, punches him hard and says, "You stop doing all this," and tells him to go and apologize to his grandfather. But real Nam Shin refuses to do so and says, "I will send the grandfather to a nursing home to die alone, just like they did with my dad." In the next scene, we see robot Nam Shin and Kong-so together, where both of them are very happy with each other. From a distance, Laura also becomes very happy seeing them. Next morning, we see real Nam Shin, Jong-gil, and the grandfather together, where real Nam Shin forcefully gets the signature of the grandfather on a stock transfer paper so that he gets the company of the grandfather. Seeing all this, Jong-gil becomes very happy. After that, real Nam Shin sends the grandfather to a nursing home. Then, in the next scene, we see Mr. Jin, who comes to the nursing home to meet the grandfather. After seeing him, the grandfather gets a little emotional. Then, he takes the grandfather to robot Nam Shin and Kong So, where he gets very emotional after seeing them. Seeing him crying, our hero goes and hugs him. Then, we can see robot Nam Shin with Mr. Jin. Mr. Jin tells him that Jong-gil is using real Nam Shin for his own benefit, and the day his work is completed, he will throw real Nam Shin out of the company. So, we have to stop real Nam Shin from getting ruined even more, and I need your help in this. To which robot Nam Shin says, I cannot do this, because real Nam Shin has told me that I am only a machine, and I do not even have the right to die by myself. Robot Nam Shin is leaving from there, then Mr. Jin tells him, you are not a machine, you are a very good person. You are such a machine who has a sweetheart, so please forget whatever real Nam Shin had said to you. Then, robot Nam Shin comes to Kong So and tells her that Mr. Jin asked me for help, but I refused. After which, she convinces him a lot and asks him to help Mr. Jin. After he agrees, both of them have a lot of fun together. In the next scene, we see everyone in a conference meeting where the real Nam Shin is going to become the chairman. After which, Jong-gil praises the real Nam Shin a lot and says, Mr. Nam Shin has launched the driverless car, and he's going to make M-City very soon. Then Mr. Jin stands up and says to everyone, the one who has made the driverless car is not real Nam Shin, but a robot Nam Shin. On which, the real Nam Shin and Jong-gil get very angry at him. Finally, our hero also comes there. Robot Nam Shin tells everyone, I have launched the driverless car, and I am a robot, and my name is Robot Nam Shin 3. After hearing all this, everyone becomes shocked, but Kong So feels very happy. Seeing all this, Jong-gil gets very angry and starts saying, the chairman of the company will be none other than real Nam Shin, because grandfather has transferred his shares to him. On hearing this, Nam Shin's aunt says, this is not at all, because now grandfather has given his shares to Mr. Jin, and I am also going to give my share to Mr. Jin. Seeing all this, Jong-gil gets very angry. Mr. Jin tells everyone there, now, I am the owner of this company, but the real owner of this group is robot Nam Shin. Hearing all this, real Nam Shin starts feeling dizzy right there, after which, he is taken out from there. Seeing robot Nam Shin, all the people of the company get angry and say, how can a robot run our company? After which, robot Nam Shin gives a very good presentation about M-City. After seeing his such a good presentation, all the people present there get impressed by our hero, robot Nam Shin. Mr. Jin comes out, and the real Nam Shin punches him hard and gets very angry at him. But Mr. Jin completely ignores him and leaves from there. On the other hand, robot Nam Shin and Kong So enjoy a lot together. After coming out, when both of them are harassed by news reporters, robot Nam Shin hugs Kong So and takes her from there. On the other hand, Laura is taking care of real Nam Shin, but the real Nam Shin gets more angry at her. Then, Laura gives him a ticket to the Czech Republic and says, we both can go back from there and live happily together. But real Nam Shin gets very angry and tears up the tickets. Then, at the company, Jong-gil comes to know that Mr. Jin has thrown them out of the company. Seeing this, first he smiles a lot, but then calls Mr. Jin and gets very angry at him, saying, how can you throw me out of this company? After which, he goes to meet Mr. Jin, who is sitting inside comfortably. Jong-gil tries to threaten him by showing the footage of robot Nam Shin and Kong So, but Mr. Jin handles all his things very comfortably. Seeing all this, Jong-gil gets very angry at him. But guards take Jong-gil out of the company. Next morning, robot Nam Shin goes to meet Laura very happily, where they both talk to each other very lovingly. Laura tells robot Nam Shin, I know this is wrong, but you and real Nam Shin can't live together in Korea, so please can you go back to the Czech Republic with David? But robot Nam Shin refuses to do so, saying sorry to his mom. Then Laura also says sorry to him and tells him, I have installed a kill switch in your body. Hearing this, robot Nam Shin says, It's okay, Mom. I know that your son is most important for you. Just like you can do anything for your son, I can do anything for Kong So. Then he comes out and hugs Kong So. In the next scene, we see both of them near David, where David returns robot Nam Shin's kill switch and says, This is your life, so please always protect it well. After that, David says to Kong So, Tomorrow is robot Nam Shin's birthday because I and Laura together made him yesterday. On the other hand, the doctor asks Mr. Jean, Why did you do all this to real Nam Shin? On which Mr. Jean says, I have done this to improve him, and the day when real Nam Shin will come to his senses, I will return his company to him. Next, real Nam Shin gets very angry and goes to meet grandfather, where grandfather thinks him to be robot Nam Shin in his dementious condition and tells him everything about its kill switch. Then, real Nam Shin remembers that day when David had gone out of the company with something. After which, he goes to Kong So's gym, and when Kong So goes outside, real Nam Shin goes inside the gym and starts finding the kill switch. At last, he finds it. We see robot Nam Shin and Kong So's dad together at a shop, where real Nam Shin buys a same locket for Kong So. Seeing robot Nam Shin doing all this, dad becomes very happy. The shop owner tells him, Your son is very good. Hearing this, dad says, He is not my son, but he is my future son-in-law. Hearing this, our hero becomes very happy. In the next scene, real Nam Shin shows up near robot Nam Shin, where he calls him and tells him, Today is your last day, because after today, you will disappear from this world forever. Seeing robot Nam Shin like this, Kong So gets very sad. Real Nam Shin says, So, if you do not want to make Kong So sad, then follow me. After which, robot Nam Shin, seeing all of them together, becomes very emotional. After that, he keeps the locket on a tree nearby and starts to leave from there. After that, he tries to call Laura, but her call is not received. When he starts to leave, Kong So comes there and says, Are you going to meet your mom because she made you? On which our hero says, Yes, of course. Then she gives the locket to robot Nam Shin and says, After all, before leaving, make me wear this because my dad said that you bought this for me. Then she says, I want both of us to always stay together. Finally, here, our hero kisses her and hugs her, saying, I love you. Next, we see Jong-gil, where he also knows about the kill switch, and he also follows real Nam Shin. Then we see robot Nam Shin near real Nam Shin, where both of them talk to each other a little bit. Real Nam Shin is about to activate the kill switch when suddenly Laura comes there and stops him from doing this because a mom is a mom. Even she has made robot Nam Shin, but still, she loves him as much as real Nam Shin. Here, we see many emotional scenes between a mom and son. She says, I will protect you. After that, she goes to real Nam Shin and forbids him from doing so. He says, You have found the last way to get your son back. Finally, here, the real Nam Shin activates the kill switch, then slowly, robot Nam Shin stops working. After seeing all this, Laura is completely shocked, and she takes out a chip from her pocket and puts it on robot Nam Shin's neck. Then, she tells robot Nam Shin, This is your birthday gift from me, but I hope it works well. After putting it, robot Nam Shin starts working again. Seeing this, Laura becomes very happy. Then, Jong-gil also comes there and drops something on both of them from the top of the building, and while trying to save his son, robot Nam Shin, all that stuff falls on Laura. After seeing this, robot Nam Shin runs to Laura, where both of them talk to each other emotionally. Laura tells robot Nam Shin, You go and say sorry to real Nam Shin, because I am leaving him alone here once again. After saying this, Laura died. Seeing all this, robot Nam Shin starts saying, Hello mom, hello mom, hello mom. After which, Jong-gil calls the police and says, A robot has killed a person here. Then after some time, Kong So also comes there because Laura had also called her to reach there. After that, David also arrives there and both of them go inside. Seeing Laura in this state, both of them are completely shocked. After which, David tearfully asks Kong So to take robot Nam Shin away from there, and he becomes very emotional after seeing Laura. Then the police also arrive there. On the other hand, real Nam Shin starts making a very ugly face after seeing the food made by his mother. Then, Jong-gil calls him and tells him the robot has completely gone mad and out of control. Then Mr. Jean comes there and says, "Your mother has died." Hearing this, real Nam Shin gets a big shock. Then, the news spreads all around that robot Nam Shin killed Laura. Then, we see real Nam Shin, where he cries a lot after remembering the old memories of his mother. On the other hand, we see Yura, who comes to know that this act must have been done by none other than her dad. After that, Jong-gil comes to Yura and asks her to leave Korea for a few days. When Yura is about to leave, she pretends to fall down and turns on the voice recorder in her phone and puts it under the sofa. Then we see robot Nam Shin, who repeatedly sees his mother dying in front of his eyes, and after going out, he is very sad and says, "I also want to cry like a human being." Then Kong So comes and hugs him and says, "I am hugging you because your heart is crying." After which, we are again shown that the kill switch is activated in a second tone. On the other hand, Jong-gil and his assistant are very happy. Then, we see real Nam Shin, where Mr. Jean comes and says, "You should believe that your mom was not killed by robot Nam Shin, but Jong-gil killed her." After that, robot Nam Shin sends a message to real Nam Shin to meet with him. Next, David calls and asks him about the kill switch, on which robot Nam Shin tells him that 11 hours and 12 minutes ago, the kill switch has been activated again. After which, we see real Nam Shin, who leaves the house to meet robot Nam Shin, and Jong-gil's assistant follows him. On the other hand, Yura listens to the recording of her dad and his assistant, where she comes to know that her dad killed Laura, and by killing real Nam Shin, he will get the company. After this, she tries to call real Nam Shin, but she is unable to do so because his phone is switched off. After which, she messages Mr. Jean and says, "I feel like something is going to go wrong with real Nam Shin." When Yura is going to the airport, she calls Mr. Jean and tells him, "Laura was killed by none other than my dad." After knowing this, Mr. Jean goes to Jong-gil and asks him, "What did you do with real Nam Shin?" On which, Jong-gil shows him a phone. After seeing this, we come to know that Jong-gil has kidnapped real Nam Shin. After seeing all this, Mr. Jean asks him, "Where is real Nam Shin?" Then Jong-gil says, "If you want to know about him, then you will have to give this company to me. Please sign this paper quickly." After which, this scene is cut. Then we see real Nam Shin and Kong So together at the place where real Nam Shin has been kidnapped, and there we see many scenes of our heroes fighting. As soon as Jong-gil is going to kill real Nam Shin, robot Nam Shin saves him at the right time. But real Nam Shin still talks to him in a very strange way, because it seems to him that robot Nam Shin has killed his mother, Laura. Robot Nam Shin gives him the last message of his mom, saying, "She said sorry to you because she is once again leaving you alone." After that, Kong So takes real Nam Shin out from there and says to robot Nam Shin to come back soon. Then, robot Nam Shin threatens Jong-gil a lot and says to him, "Stop playing with other people's lives." When Kong So is trying to go inside, real Nam Shin stops her and says, "There is a lot of danger inside." But before leaving, Kong So tells him, robot Nam Shin's kill switch is activated again, and he has only 1 hour left. On the other hand, robot Nam Shin is about to leave from there, but Jong-gil's assistant sees him and starts chasing him. At outside, David also comes there. After running a lot, they catch robot Nam Shin. Jong-gil's assistant says, "If you are the real Nam Shin, then we will kill you right now." Real Nam Shin sees all this from a distance. After which, he tries to go near robot Nam Shin, but he stops him from doing so and removes his watch and falls it in the water. When Jong-gil's assistant looks at his hand, he does not find his watch there, so he starts thinking it to be real Nam Shin and kills him. Kong So and David watch all this from a distance. Mr. Jean also comes there, and seeing this, they get very sad and emotional. Seeing this, real Nam Shin also feels very sad for robot Nam Shin. Then this scene is cut there. Then we see a scene of 1 year later, where we see Jong Gil in jail, and his assistant comes to meet him. On the other hand, we see Mr. Jean, who is the owner of PK Motors Company. Then, the real Nam Shin also comes there, after which both of them talk a little together. The real Nam Shin asks Mr. Jean about Kong So and says, "How is he now?" Then we see Kong So at the beach, where she is crying a lot after remembering our hero. Then, someone from behind says, "You are angry." And seeing him, Kong So becomes shocked because he is none other than our hero, Robot Nam Shin. After which, he goes near Kong So and hugs her, and she is also very happy after seeing him. And from a distance, the three of them, standing and watching them both, David tells them, "Without the help of both of you, I couldn't find Robot Nam Shin, and now I am happy after fixing my son completely." Robot Nam Shin tells her, "Now I have no powers." On which she says, "It doesn't matter for me, because my heart's feelings for you will not change." After which, both of them kiss each other, and with this, our drama ends here. So, guys, how would you like this drama? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more dramas like this. Thanks for watching.